Welcome to Talk the Walk. I'm Jaynie Morris. Great to have your company either for the very first time or hopefully you've come back to have another listen, because each episode I'm spending time with people who have a story to tell, a story that I actually feel may interest you, inspire you, make you think outside of the box, or just be of some sort of general interest. And my guest today is one of those people that I feel that you need to hear about, find out about, and learn a bit about their background as well as what they're doing now. Now, Bruce Blackwell is a guy from Australia who's following a passion that started from a very early age in life. His father was a winemaker at the famous St. Hallett Wines in the Barossa Valley in Australia, in South Australia. He's got a wealth of talent behind him that's been fueled by travel, and he's also co-owner of a beautiful boutique winery called Bruno and George in the Barossa. Bruce Blackwell, welcome to Talk the Walk.
Thank you so much, Jaynie. Pleasure to be speaking with you.
And I'm really sorry to our listeners that this isn't a video cast, because I can see that you're sitting in your office in the Barossa Valley, surrounded by lots of bottles of fantastic wine. So I think you're definitely in the place that we want to be.
Never in short supply, that's for sure.
Now, Bruce, before we get into what you're doing now and the reasons why I felt it was a good idea to have you on Talk the Walk, let's just give our listeners a little bit of an insight into who Bruce Blackwell is. And I mentioned before, you come from the Barossa Valley in South Australia, a great wine region. Tell us about life in the early days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess it was very typical. It seemed very normal for me. Doing travel, there's always comments, oh, how lovely it would be in the Barossa. But for us, it was just the Barossa. Everyone was involved in the wine industry. Friends, parents, whether it was primary production in terms of vineyards or winemakers or salespeople, it was all around the wine industry, and a lot of fun growing up. I remember as a kid, after school, you'd run into the winery, the ferments would be bubbling away, you'd be playing hide and seek or trying to sneak a little taste of the half-fermented fruit juice. And it was a wonderful upbringing, I think. And, your backyard was a winery and not necessarily where your family was. There's, now over 100 different wineries in the Barossa. So it was like, just an incredible experience as a kid to grow up.
And so your father was involved as a winemaker. How did that influence you in the early days?
Maybe subconsciously. It was when I got into wine, it was just a natural progression, I think. I think being always around wine, it just seemed like the normal thing, just like if you're around any other small business and you're always involved from a younger age. So I think when I got a little bit older and was finishing high school, it just was a natural evolution to go into wine and develop something that I had a lot of love for. But that travel bug got into me, and I'm glad I got into that first before jumping straight in.
Now let's talk about your travel bug, because now I hear on the grapevine that when you were at university, you were doing Spanish. Is that right?
Attempting
to do Spanish. Was that because you wanted to have a bit of an understanding of the language so that you could use that as an excuse to travel a bit more over perhaps into Europe? Or was that something that you had a bit of a passion for anyway, for languages?
Yeah, I've always had a passion for travel. I was born in Zimbabwe, or Rhodesia at the time, and so there was already sort of a flare of that and that interest at the beginning. But for me, as soon as I had finished high school, instead of getting right into the industry or into university even, I wanted to sort of understand what the larger picture was on a global level within the wine industry. So I did spend at least 4 or 5 years traveling across California, South America, Europe, as New Zealand, Australia, working hands-on in these different wineries to understand their view of winemaking procedures, grapes, varieties, etc. Before then jumping into uni 4 or 5 years later as a mature age student, which was great because I always thought I'd just jump into winemaking from the get-go. And after all that travel, I realized, there's a bigger world, bigger picture around the industry. And so I ended up falling into international business and marketing, but with really keeping in mind that wine love in the back of my head, which did take me from the international side to Chile, where I spent 12 months studying part of my degree in Spanish. I still remember a lecturer mentioning gringo a lot with a lot of laughter around me in the tutorials. So it did take a little while to get onto it, but very rewarding experience and a thriving wine industry over there as well.
Was your travel bug, which obviously it hasn't gone, it's always there. Was your travel bug fueled by your passion of the wine industry, or did you get involved in other things, or how did that work for you? Because you spent a lot of time overseas.
Yeah, altogether it was just over 12, 13 years overseas, and about 80 odd countries of travel, but 10 really living in. And that changed all the time. It really did. You meet so many people from so many different walks of life. And so you're always evolving in your ideas, thoughts and wants and needs. And so although the base was around wine, there was always moments of spurring off into other areas. And there was, different marketing roles that I took on outside of that industry, particularly in the UK as well. But it all added to, that experience that I could bring back to what was always going to be a small wine label, friends here in the Barossa Valley.
So that was always your end game then, that one day you would come back, home to the Barossa Valley and create and launch your own brand?
Yeah, absolutely. My business partner, Josh Norman, who comes from 1851 from the Norman's wine label here in South Australia. We shook hands in 1998 when we graduated high school. We agreed then and there that we would make a label together. It did take another 14 years before that came into fruition. Josh himself did a lot of vintages over in Spain and got some incredible experience with some great mentors traveling as well. So the idea was to go out into the world and learn more rather than just what we'd learned in the Barossa Valley from our, living here and our families. So there was a lot of knowledge that we brought back together in 2012 and 13 and set up our label the back end of 2013.
So let's talk about that. When you and Josh then finished, well, you didn't finish, but you sort of stopped the travel and all of the work that you'd done over all of those years, and you sat down there, and I'm assuming you've sat down there in front of a roaring fire up in the Barossa Valley with, a bottle of local fantastic red, and you've gone, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm painting the wrong picture, but you've turned around, you've looked at each other and gone, okay, we shook hands in 1998. Now let's do this. What did the two of you have to put into place? Because, as you mentioned before, there's over 100 wineries already. The demand brand-wise is quite huge. To create a boutique label, what did the two of you have to put together initially to feel confident that what you were doing was going in the right direction?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And to be honest, there was some naivety at the beginning. I mean, Josh was finishing a vintage in Spain. I was in London at the time. That's where that next meet happened. And we said, we've got to get this together. Let's do it. And that's where the decision was to come back and get cracking in. But I think we relied on the fact that we love what we do. We love the tradition of the Barossa. We love our mentors and the generation that went before us and how they set up the Barossa and the work that went in. And so we felt initially, if we just do what we do and we love what we're doing, people will see that, which is a bit naive, right? Because like you said, it's huge competition. It's a massive, smaller market now for all these wineries. So it was a bit of naive, but it did fall through like that a little bit in the first couple of years. People did see that. People took a chance with a label they'd never heard about. And we just kept on working hard on the wines. All the money we're making was going straight back into that wine. And really trying to improve and do what we really set out to achieve. And so it only started really small with a bottle of Grenache. That bottle turned into Shiraz as well. And so we slowly added on the varieties we wanted to work with one at a time. And as we've gone through, we've worked out, how to run a business. It wasn't, we hadn't set up a business prior. So we learned these lessons falling forward and with lots of wine in hand as well. So it's been enjoyable, rewarding, but yeah, it still has its challenges and we're learning every day. And a lot of that learning comes from the people drinking our wine, having that feedback and spent, a lot of time belly to belly. We don't have big distribution teams. It really is hand sold. And so we learn every day. And a lot of that is from the people drinking, which is really, really cool.
Where did the name Bruno and George come from?
Oh, bloody hell. Okay, so I've told this story a few different ways. I'm trying to get it all together, but essentially it's our two nicknames. So Bruno was my nickname, Bruce, many moons ago, probably just enough to make it legit. And Josh's nickname is George, and has been George for quite some time, which actually I believe came from when he was in Spain, and Jorge and George, and that's where it sort of came to pass. So yeah, so essentially it's just two nicknames rather than Bruce and Josh.
So with your with Bruno and George, as you mentioned before, you're very hands-on. The two of you are very hands-on in every element, right from from vintage all the way through, and certainly in sales and marketing. So you have, because you're a boutique label, I've seen that you have a very good boutique sales model. Can you explain that to our listeners of how that works?
Yeah, well, essentially at the very beginning, it was organically. I mean, the first vintage we did was only 600 litres, which is so minute in the industry, right? 2 barrels of wine, which I think we were responsible for a third of that, just with the consumption with our family and friends. But it really was that hand sell in that first year, where, we had 20, 30 people buy it, and got the feedback, and it went on from there. And we sort of didn't want to move away from that real hands-on and having that experience of sharing a wine with someone in person. So instead of increasing production, which you traditionally do in a wine business, right? And then you'd bring on some distribution, some extra support, some arms in that sales to venture out to where you can't go, and things can generally progress faster. But we sort of wanted to do it ourselves, and it is a slower way, but I think a lot more effective, because you get to meet those people who are enjoying your wines face to face, belly to belly. And I think it's a lot more powerful experience. So you can actually share the how, the why, and how that came to be in their hands a lot more effectively. And we've found that with that, a lot of the people buying our wine are continually buying our wine, which is how our club started, I guess. And that's where we really focus most of our time, is working with our members. We look after them in every way we can. We're always trying to improve that so they can have a better experience than they would, in another club somewhere else in the world.
So let's talk about the wine club that you have, which is the core for your sales and marketing, and it is a very smart way to do business. Especially, would you agree? Especially in this day and age, when for instance, people go into a bottle shop, or into a hotel or what have you, and they'd like to get a nice bottle of red or what have you, and they stand there in front of all these different labels. That the commonality is it's a Shiraz, it's a Cabernet, it's a Sauvignon Blanc, or what have you, but we're hit with all these different labels. So to make the right choice, it's quite confronting. So with a wine club, then I'm assuming then that the consumer, as a part of the wine club, gets to know the wine more through what you give them, what you market to them, the information that you give them. So then it's more of a one-stop shop convenience of getting quality. Is that where you go with your wine club?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of advantages of it for both sides, for us as a business as well as our club members. But you're dead right. We get to have that firsthand one-on-one information. I mean, a great example is Montepulciano from Eden Valley that we released in 2016. And it's a dry grain vineyard up there. It's gone really well, but a lot of people hadn't heard of that variety here in South Australia or in Australia, right? When we first made it, I think half a wine club was what? And so it was a really tricky one to start. But, with the club, we had the opportunity to go through it, explain why and how, and, where it comes from, why we wanted to make it, what kind of wine they can expect from it. And after that first 6 months, it was one of our biggest sellers within the club, because it was a point of difference, right? But it was also really, really enjoyable wine, particularly a foodie wine. And so, if those people in particular, are walking through your local bottle shop and they saw a Monty, they're walking past. It's it happens for me as well, right? What I don't understand, I get confused with, it scares me, and I go to wherever I'm comfortable with. And usually you're picking one of those 10 bottles all your life, because that's where your comfort zone's in. So it's a great opportunity for our members to go, what, I understand a bit more now. I'm going to go out and have a risk, try this wine. And it opens up, not just for Bruno and George, but all wineries doing something a little bit different, because they know a little bit more about that particular variety or wine.
So as we all know, I suppose this is a bit of a controversial question for you, but I will ask it. As we all know, over the last 12 months or so, there has been some challenges happening with the Australian wine industry because of international reduction, shall we say, in demand. How, if any, of that has affected Bruno and George?
Well, for us, because of our model being really sort of made around our members, we hadn't really felt that as much as a lot of wineries across the Barossa Valley, but even across Australia, right? So there are a lot of wineries that have suffered massively because of it. But like in an industry, when you sort of have a large volume of your sales going to one area with no diversity, it always leaves you in that position. So it is very unfortunate, but I mean, I think most people in the industry realize this has happened many times before. It's not the first time markets have shut down in a large scale. It's happened 3 or 4 times that I know of. And so for us, we've been very lucky that we haven't been caught up. We were in there a little bit in export. However, we've been able to sort of stay out of, I guess, that in terms of business. And our club has been really, really supportive. I mean, we get emails coming through ordering extra wine, especially through this last 12 months. I mean, going to COVID as well, we were just blown away with the support and how much they've really backed us. So we've been really, really fortunate to be in that position.
I think that's really interesting of what you've just touched on as far as the last 12 months is concerned, because research shows whenever there's a global or even a national economic downturn or there's uncertainty, I still can't say that word, in the economy, or, you know, as we, you know, have had with the pandemic and what have you, there's only a few industries throughout that period of time that actually do really well. Florists, online movies, and wine. So you've actually experienced the opportunity that the last 12 months of COVID has presented?
Yeah, absolutely. I think particularly at the beginning, we all witnessed it. We're all there, right? At the beginning, it was almost a bit of an excitement. There was like these little lockdowns, and it was all crazy. Everyone was on a house party, and there was this whole new wave of what's going on. There was obviously fear and concern, but there was also this little bit of, hang on, what's going on? This is a bit crazy. And we noticed a pickup in wine straight away. We had a lot more sales going around direct in Australia. People were forced to stay at home or work from home, and the wine orders did go up. Because we're such a small business though, right, our reach is very small. So we can't just flick on the switch and go, hey guys, we've got wine, we can get out to. A lot of the larger players, I think, had a lot of success on that, and that's dead right. I think wine sales online went through, in some places, 200-300%. So yeah, there was a lot of people at home going, I want my wine delivered to my door, thank you very much. Yeah, so I mean, for us though, we did see that rise. I think as we went through into the middle and second half of COVID, it became a bit more sobering in both ways. Yeah, it was starting to get tough, really, really was. And so we did what we can to support from our business and our offering. But yeah, it started to sort of decline a bit towards the end, and things got real, I think. There was more larger concerns and trying to get some extra wine into the household.
I'm all about supporting local, and I'm all about supporting Australian-owned, Australian product. And Bruno and George definitely ticks the boxes on all of that. So the online industry has grown enormously again because of the last, you know, for the COVID with pandemic as well. So you're actually set up beautifully with your business model for all of that. What's the future look like for Bruno and George?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been working over that COVID period, a bit more time on my hands. I do travel a bit generally because we do have a bit of, I guess, space in the restaurant game. But for me, I spent a lot of that COVID period working on our website, but to make that a user experience a lot more easier, but also for our offering. Traditionally, wine clubs, you know, businesses would get some wine together, wrap it up, and send it out. And there wasn't really a lot of option for our consumers to go, oh, but I want to try this and I want to try that, but that's too expensive or whatnot. So we spent a lot of time during that period to set up a website where, as a member, you can go on and you can hand select individual bottles of wines. So rather than this pack that could be super expensive, you can hand pick one bottle from there, and then your 4 rosé and 1 Shiraz or something. So we launched that just a couple months ago now, and the feedback's been brilliant. But essentially, people can just swap and change and mix up wines as they see fit, rather than what we see fit. And that was really, really important, because otherwise, I think you can get into compromising things where you go, we've got extra wine of this, and we want to get rid of it, and you can see where that ends up. So we just wanted to give all the power in terms of how much you're buying, how much you're spending, and a mixture of what that is to our members.
So what's the future look like for Bruce Blackwell? What have you got coming up on a
Um, wow.
give us a bit of insight into you.
Um,
Bit of
yeah.
goss, what's going on with Bruce?
Well, definitely. I'd hate to say I'd probably be in the Barossa the rest of my life. I love it down here. It's amazing. I think some vineyard, so we can really concentrate on our wines and a bit more control over the type of wines we're making. But yeah, a patch of dirt up here, without a doubt, would be incredible. And also something that Josh and I have continually spoken about. It's just a place where we can have members, and not a traditional cellar door, but we're working on something where we can have our members come in a lot more relaxed environment. We just want to keep it real so people can come down, spend, use us as a base to search the rest of the Barossa, where there's so much amazing things to go and do. Yeah, just have something rather than that traditional sense of selling.
Fantastic.
I
Bruce.
love cooking, so that's going to be right up there.
Well, I was going to mention that. So yeah, is that coming into the mix as well?
100%. I think that the long-term goal would be definitely having, our friends, members and whatnot coming down once a month, where we can actually do, 3 courses, all hand-cooked, all selected from the Barossa Valley to match our wines and back vintages, and really let our hair down with a great experience in the Barossa.
Yeah, fantastic. Bruce, if you had an 8-year-old Bruce sitting in front of you right now, what advice would you give him?
What advice? Well, besides investing in Apple shares, no, I would, I'd probably take a lead from what my dad, the way I grew up. And I was very fortunate because my old man didn't put a huge amount of pressure on me when I was young. From that age and going forward, I was sort of, I sort of had to force my way in the direction I was going, which led to my traveling right before uni. And I think I really, really took some time, but I learned a lot of lessons from that. There was a lot of subtle lessons from my old man, but there was a lot of freedom that came with it as well. And I think I'd be the same sort of lesson I'd be sharing with that 8-year-old is try everything. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to fail, and just go out there and take it on, and you'd be surprised what comes back at you.
Great advice, and you've certainly followed that so far in your life and your career, Bruce. That's thank you for that. So, if our listeners would like to find out more about what you and Josh are doing, and more about Bruno and George, how can they do that, Bruce?
Yeah, absolutely. The website's up and running, and you'll see on there it is geared up for our club and our members. But yeah, brunogeorgewines.com.au. And you can flick us a message. It will come direct to me, and I can help in any way that they'd like.
Fantastic. Well, look, it's been great to have you on as our guest today on Talk the Walk, Bruce. And we wish you and Josh all the very best for the future. And we'd love to, please keep in touch with us. Let us know what's going on, and if there's any exciting news that we can share with our listeners, please let us know. But yeah, good luck and for the rest of this year as well, and keep making those amazing wines that you do at Bruno and George.
Absolutely. Look out for 2021 vintage. It's going to be a cracker for the whole Barossa.
Well, listeners, I can say to you that I have had the good fortune of tasting these beautiful wines at Bruno and George, and a little personal plug, I think that they are amazing. So I would encourage you, if you want to find out more information, as Bruce just said, all of the details, all of the contact details, the website and everything is below in the comment section of this podcast that you're listening to now. And I do thank you so much for spending the time to join us here on Talk the Walk. And if you have got any questions or comments, please put those below. Remember to like, share, and also subscribe. Never miss an issue of an episode, I should say. There you go. It is live recording, isn't it? Live recording, even that's not right. If you don't ever want to miss out on an episode of Talk the Walk, it's easy. Simply subscribe or go to my website, jayniemorris.com. All of the details are there, but also all of the back episodes that we've got for Talk the Walk. They're all on there. Or, of course, you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, iTunes, Apple, you know what? We're everywhere, all around the world. It's been great to have your company, and we look forward to you joining us again when next we have a guest on Talk the Walk. I'm Jaynie Morris. Create an absolutely fabulous day.